And I suspect it's looking lovely for the Football Ferns. I wasn't a dominating performance against Costa Rica. I think that was in Costa Rica, but they did have a 1-1 draw to start the Michael Main interim era. And India Page Riley scored a banger from outside the box. So I don't know. They didn't lose the game. They had a nice draw, and Riley scored a banger. So that's almost as good as it gets for the Football Ferns right now, considering how things have gone over the last 6 months. When are they playing again?
On Wednesday afternoon. So tomorrow they've got a second game. And I think the second game will frame how we feel about the tour. Because like ordinarily, a 1-1 draw against Costa Rica would probably be a bit of a disappointment. Like not a major disappointment. It's not a huge setback. A defeat, a 3-0 defeat or something would count as a huge setback. This wasn't that. Although they did have to rely on Vic Essen making a number of very good saves in that game, so she was in top form to repel Costa Rica, particularly in the first half. But I think there's enough sort of mitigating factors where the draw was solid, and if they can build off of it in the second game, then you start looking towards a nice, good, good progressive tour of Costa Rica slash of San Jose, because I think both games were in the same place, and it was super windy in that game as well, which was a weird one. The pitch looked all right from the TV, but you can't always tell because there was a lot of bad touches out there from both teams. That might just be because neither team is like top of the pops in world football. It might just be that their technique isn't as good. It might have been the pitch. I don't know. Can't tell that from the FIFA Plus coverage. Although, oh man, like glorious moment at halftime of that game watching on FIFA Plus when I realized that you can now rewind the live streams on FIFA Plus. That is going to be so much more helpful for the covering stuff when I don't have to wait for the replay to be uploaded again a couple hours later. That's immense relief when that happened. But yeah, the Michael Main came in. It's weird that it feels like his first tour as interim, but it's his third tour as interim. But what we saw from them leading up to the Olympics and then at the Olympics was pretty much a continuation of how they were trying to play under Jeka Klimkova. So it was a different voice, but kind of the same style. Michael Main's been allowed to bring in his own coaching staff team around him and everything, and he's promised that they're going to try a couple different things. He has some fresh ideas. We'll see. Well, so I was waiting to see what those might be. He also did the thing that every coach seems to do, male and football in New Zealand football, is talking about how we're going to bring the style forward and be more. We're going to be more, braver in possession and whatever. And especially with the Ferns, sometimes I just wonder if that's actually making them worse by trying to be a team that holds the ball more often when their strength is in how well they defend and win the ball and try to counterattack and that. But there's just kind of this, I don't know, there's a little bit of a stigma against that at the moment. But the way the way the Ferns lined up against Costa Rica was with a back three. It was kind of like a 3-5-2 formation. So three midfielders, couple wing backs, three centre backs, two strikers, which was Katie Kitching playing up alongside Kelly Brown. So Kitching quite far forward there. It was a good aggressive attacking team that was picked. Didn't entirely work. The back three was quite messy and particularly with their positioning. And I think the wing backs got caught out a lot because they picked Hannah Blake on one side and Indy Riley on the other side, who are both attacking players, even though Indy Riley has been playing a lot as a wingback for Crystal Palace in the WSL, so she was at least primed for it. I think she was one of New Zealand's better players as well. It's just that there were times they'd lose the ball in the midfield and the wingbacks are trying to attack and there's just no one there out wide. The back three gets stretched. So there's things like that where it's like that's going to take a few games. It will take fewer games if they actually pick Katie Bowen and CJ Bott to play in two of those crucial positions, who are your two best players. Like, so fingers crossed they're back on the side with no dramas next time around, because it's pretty obvious that they need them, especially when you're moving into a formation that suits them even more than what you were playing beforehand. But yeah, there was solid stuff from there was some solid stuff from the Ferns, particularly in how they responded because they didn't start the game very well, but they did score just before halftime, and then their second half was a lot better as well. And so if they're improving from half to half, hopefully they improve from game to game. And if they have a good solid win on Wednesday in the second game, I think we can call this a successful tour.
A lot of formation chat there, which we know that I really appreciate. So the players were playing on the field, they were playing on the right, they were playing on the left, they were playing in defense, they were playing in midfield, and they were playing in attack. And I also did you hit on a few buzzwords. Not only did you hit on the formation that's a buzz topic for the Niche Cage football department, but you also hit on a few buzzwords. You mentioned mitigating factors, which is
Did I?
Yes, which is one of the strangest things, specifically in rugby union, but you also see it in rugby league because the
with the old high shots and stuff.
The high shots, and there was no mitigation. There were mitigating factors. There was no mitigating factors. Just use words like no, this isn't to call you out, as I have a habit of doing. But like, okay, you're a rugby player. English might even be your second language, and then you got the referee telling you there was no mitigation. Like what? Like let's just use proper words instead of these like kind of buzzwords that a lot of regular people don't understand. A lot of rugby players won't understand. But the referees, they're all about the mitigation. There was no mitigating factors, so you're gone for 10, mate, whatever it is. And you also mentioned being brave. This is another buzzword for me. Being brave. You hear it a lot in sports. The batters need to be brave. Well, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is play a forward defense. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is bowl top of off. But it's like, oh, we need to be brave. We need to be attacking. We need to be aggressive. We need to take the game on. But that's why you lose, because you don't understand the nuance of being brave. Sometimes the bravest, most courageous thing you can do is to be defensive, is to do nothing. So it always kind of, whenever I hear a referee say mitigation, I spew up. Whenever I hear someone being brave, I'm like, there's other ways to be brave. And
that sounds like it's not the word, it's the definition of bravery, right? Because that's kind of what I was thinking of about this idea of the Ferns, or whichever, because they say it about the All Whites, they say it, and there's multiple coaches back say it about the youth teams as well.
I'm thinking very specifically England cricket, but that's my own.
England cricket, yes, is probably pushed that a little bit too much, and
more so the women are very big on being brave and being courageous.
Yeah, and it's in the footballing sense that's tend to be like we're gonna take risks on attack. It was like you were gonna do that anyway, surely. Like it just seems like there is definitely a I don't know. There's this idea that positivity, bravery, courage, whatever they mean, a certain style of play, which I agree with you on that, where there's other ways to do it. And actually, if everyone's expecting you to do one thing, well, potentially it is actually, in terms of the literal meaning of bravery and courage, it's probably braver and more courageous to go against the grain of what everyone else is trying to play with, which I feel like I felt that a little bit about the Wellington Phoenix when I'm seeing people complaining about how they're like this, but the style of play is so bad. It's like the style isn't the problem, the execution is the problem. But the fact that they're sitting, like the fact that they're a defensive-ish, counter-attacking type team, that's brave too. Like what's the difference in that? It's not negative football if you have a plan of how you're going to score goals, right? Like you might not be able to do it as well as you're planning, but it's not like they turn up playing, because you see it as well with lineup chat with the Phoenix too. It's like, well, they've picked 7 defenders, but no, they haven't. They've picked 4 defenders and 3 or 4 midfielders just that those midfielders can also play in defense. But they're not playing in defense. They're playing in midfield, or they're playing on the wing or whatever, you know? They're not picking a back seven formation. It's not how they're lining up. It's you got me going now as well, but I think there's ideas like there's a thing about the definition of some of those words where people seem to think it only means one thing, which takes it away from what the word actually means. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do, but I don't care anymore because we need to talk Wellington Phoenix.
Yeah, let's
Auckland
move on
FC,
to some real topics.
Aotearoa Derby, where 27,000 people showed up at the Temple of Mount Smart to watch a game of football, which is far superior than Super Rugby. This is where I want to start because I don't understand how expectations for the Wellington Phoenix can be so high when your centre midfield is Sheridan and Roa-Conchi. Two good players who are two young players. So when I'm watching that, the Aotearoa Derby, and it was pretty obvious. Phoenix were pretty good 20 minutes or so. By that time, I'm like, wait, who's in the center of the midfield? The young fella Sheridan and Roa-Conchi, who hasn't started many games this season and is still quite a young fella. Oh, they're doing an all right job. They're competitive. They're, going back and forward with Auckland FC. And ever since I had that thought, then the capitulation started for Wellington Phoenix. But there needs to be, for me, outside looking in. If you're a Wellington Phoenix fan, you need to have a little sip of the reality brew. Like, you're not really playing with your big dogs at that stage. Like, Costa's the only one starting. Rojas is coming off the bench from a major injury layoff. Roof is coming off the bench after an illness. You're playing against the best team in the A-League with two youngsters as your centre midfielders. I like them. I like all the Wellington Phoenix youngsters. If you add in Hughes, well, then three of your kind of core four, two centre midfielders, two centre backs, 3 out of the 4 are youngsters. Like, let's not be delusional. Let's not be delusional about what's possible if you're playing with that many youngsters in key positions. Like, that's the reality of sport when you're playing with youngsters in key positions. It's going to be very difficult to beat other teams, let alone the best team. And I don't think Chiefy is doing that just because he likes young talent. No, he's doing that because Roof has just been out ill, sick, for weeks. Like, he didn't just have the flu. He was sick for weeks, and he's just coming back. You could get in, okay, they released some players. Retre, was he out injured, or was he...
He was injured, I think, for that game. He wasn't in the squad at all.
So your two experienced midfielders, Rufa and Retre, are not capable of starting the game. They are your two best centre midfielders. So the equivalent to me is, okay, the Warriors, they're starting an NRL game against the Penrith Panthers with Luke Hanson and Jet Cleary as their halves. You're not winning. So to me, that is the strangest thing, and I've said it all season, right? Like, the Wellington Phoenix, they're playing with a lot of youngsters in key positions. Hughes is starting a lot of games at centre-back. Sometimes you've got two youngsters at centre-back when Wootton was out injured or whatever. Sometimes your whole back four is youngsters. If we're counting Piper as a youngster, but he's an older youngster. Like, that is the reality for Wellington Phoenix. And yes, it hurts to lose to Auckland FC. Yes, it hurts to lose A-League games and be in the bottom half of the ladder. But, like, your best players have been out injured or unavailable for most of the season. And your youngsters are battling away to keep you afloat. Like, Tim Payne's only come back from injury recently. So let's talk about those injuries. Tim Payne's been out injured for a decent time. Roof has been out injured ill for a decent time. Redtre is currently unavailable. Rojas had a significant injury layoff.
Two. Rojas had two significant injury layoffs. He came back, then got injured again.
Was Nagasawa playing?
Nagasawa is the one flip side to what you're saying there, in that they did have an experienced midfielder sitting on the bench unused. I mean, they probably would have used him if it was a closer game, but it wasn't much point later on. But yeah, he was one instance of a guy who was available. He was there on the bench. They didn't play him.
Yeah, that is like fair play. That is a little bit weird. But then you get into, okay, what are the youngsters? What are the emerging players not so good at that Auckland FC is very good at? Physicality, intuition, reading the play, understanding the rebounds and the tap-ons and all that stuff, because that's how Auckland FC scored their early goals. That's how Auckland FC dominated their game. Rebounds, second chance opportunities. Like the ball just falls into vacant space. It's a 50-50 ball. Auckland FC wins that. And they win that because they got bigger bodies, aside from Kelly Hield. But they got bigger bodies. They're more experienced. They're more physical. They're more robust. And they win the game. So I think, like, ultimately, unfortunately for the Wellington Phoenix, all these derbies have played out according to the situation of both teams. Like, Auckland FC is the best team in the A-League, which means they do a lot of shit really, really well. Starting with effort, intensity, physicality. The Wellington Phoenix is struggling this season because all their best players have been out injured or unavailable, and their youngsters are playing in a lot of key positions, and they're playing big minutes. Like Sheridan plays big minutes every game. Hughes is playing big minutes every game. You got Kelly Hield in goal. He's playing the whole game as a goalie. He's going to make mistakes. He's a youngster. There's a lot of these. Am I crazy for like viewing it that simple? Because I am conscious I'm not a footballing expert, so I'm a bit wary about that. But like these derbies, just to me, reflect the situations of both clubs. And I still believe that presents a lot of optimism for the Wellington Phoenix moving forward. Like they will be a better club, a better organization for the shit they've been through in these 3 derby games.
Yeah, I mean, I think there might be some people who would call you crazy for that, but if they do, they can call me crazy as well, because I kind of agree with that. I just think there's a lot of emotions flying around at the moment, particularly on the Wellington Phoenix side, you know, and there's been some lashing outs that I've seen from a lot of the reaction. Like I don't see how you can blame the coach for any of this, although there are selections. He tinkers a lot, and maybe you can have some gripes and whatever. But I mean, I already just did a thing about how I think their style of play is not nearly as negative as it gets treated as. So we'll leave that one there. I haven't already done that, but
I don't view their style as defensive though, because early in that game there was the exact pattern I was talking about. Where the ball goes straight into they always play into, like, that might be an issue because they always play the ball into the same spaces. So if you're a experienced physical team like Auckland FC, you can kind of get the jump on where the ball's going to be and the patterns. But there was a pattern. They play a direct ball to Costa. He lays it off. Then they play another forward ball. Like the Phoenix, to me, yes, they love to go back. They love to play out from defense, which is brave. But if you're going against the grain, it's also brave to just play a long ball, as we're talking about. Sometimes the easiest option is not playing long, but sometimes they will play long. That's the bravest thing you can do. But the Wellington Phoenix, whenever they go forward, it's really intricate passing. It's passing into space, guys moving into space, and tap-ons. And Chico came into he played a lot of minutes in that game.
Played the whole game.
He's a razzle-dazzle extraordinaire. Like, there's nothing defensive about him, aside from his late challenge, which I did love to see. You're a new signing. You're an attacking wizard. There's a breakaway. You just chop him down. That's beautiful. It was good stuff from him. He earned my respect. A little bit of mana for Chico. Like, I understand the Wellington Phoenix do go back a lot, which is very frustrating. Any sports team that goes back, check yourself. Like, we're here to go forward. We're here to have fun. Like, just like that. I think that's my ultimate sporting thing. Like, let's just have fun. However you want to do it, just have fun playing your sport. But I also, like, to their detriment, the Wellington Phoenix move forward in a very intricate style. And there is nothing a bit defensive about their attacking style. Like, they're passing the ball into risky spaces. They're inviting a 50-50 contest. They're doing little tap-ons. Like, Wellington Phoenix women are not defensive. It's nothing defensive.
No, they're good defensively, but they're not defensive.
Exactly, and they're not defensive because they're so frisky in attack. Like, they go too far in the other direction, but there is a little bit of that still with the Wellington Phoenix men, where they love to challenge the opposition with their passing and with their movement. So a little bit of a rant there, but based on what I've seen, I can't, like, you could say Auckland FC is more of a defensive team because they win the ball off you with their defense. They create attacking chances from their defense. So in a logical, like, conclusion, if you're creating your attacking chances from defense, you're a defensive team.
Yeah, and that is what the Phoenix are trying to do as well when they pass it around at the back, is they're trying to draw you forward. They want teams to press them so that they can pass through it, which is tricky to do, but they're pretty good at it. You saw a few moments, more than a few. There were actually quite a number of them in the derby there, where they were able to pass through the press from Auckland FC. They want you to do that so that you then commit more numbers forward and there's space and behind, and they attack in that space and behind. Like, it is an attacking strategy to have the ball further back around their defense. Now, do they always get the balance right? Absolutely not. And that's been a factor. But also, I think the main factor is that they just haven't had someone to do that, that sort of pivoting between the two phases of, like, going from sideways to forwards. Like, they've so desperately needed someone who, well, frankly, someone who does exactly what Chico Heraldes does. And you saw more than enough of that from him on his debut to think, well, this is exactly the player that they've been lacking, and they're going to have him for the last 9 weeks. And Marco Rojas is back from injury, and Tim Payne is seemingly fit again, although he always gets a knock or two every game, but that's how Tim Payne plays. That's unavoidable. That's the burdens of being T-Payne. But Alex Rufer is building up his minutes again. He might be available to start, probably not 90 minutes, but he might be available to start on, I think it's Friday when they play. So frankly, they should have a stronger team over the last 2 months of the season than they've had at any point up until this point. Like, they will be better moving forward. It's just, unfortunately, they had to do the derby game first. And Auckland FC were just better and much better. Like, stronger, better, fitter, faster, whatever. Like, they're a more complete team full of more complete footballers. And their first three, man, I was trying to write about it afterwards. I don't even know what to say about these guys without just repeating things, but the repetitions are there because they do the same thing every week. Like, they don't start fast. They poke and they prod and they make sure they make sure they're sturdy at the back, which arguably could be seen as a defensive tactic. But I mean, you can be a good attacking team by being defensive, same as we're talking about, like, Phoenix women are a good defensive team, but they don't play defensively. It can be the other way around as well. Like, they poke and they prod and they look for little chinks in the armor, then they find something, and then they just rip you to shreds doing that one thing. Like, they did it to the Phoenix, 3 goals in 10 minutes because they realized the Phoenix couldn't handle these aerial crosses, which is weird because normally the Phoenix are really good at that. Hughes is strong in the air. Wooden is especially strong in the air. No one's as strong as Sermon is in the air, but they've lost him, so there's a step back. Another thing to consider of why the Phoenix, like, potentially overachieved last season, but then regardless of that, they're not going to be the same team again when you lose 3 of your best players, right? But the Auckland FC, 3 goals in 10 minutes, all from aerial crosses, a couple of them from scoring on the second or even third or fourth phase afterwards. Like, it's not just that Phoenix don't deal with the first one, they're also not getting to the loose ball afterwards. Like, that's big man footy. And when you have the youngest player in the Wellington Phoenix, not Wellington, the youngest player in the Auckland FC squad starting lineup in that game was Alex Paulson, who's 22 years old. There were 5 players in the Phoenix starting 11 who are younger than Alex Paulson, plus Corbin Piper, who's only a couple months older than him and has played way fewer A-League games. So, and I mean, you look at because their average ages weren't crazy. Auckland's average age of that 11 was 28. Phoenix's was 25 and a half. So it's not a major difference, but that's because the Phoenix have a lot of young guys, 19, 20, 21, 22. And then they have a 33-year-old Scott Wooden, a 30-year-old Tim Payne, 31-year-old Tim Payne, 30-year-old, I think that's Hideki Ishige, 29-year-old Heraldez, 35-year-old Costa Barbarouses. So the Phoenix had no one between the age of 22 and 29. The Auckland FC's starting lineup had a 22-year-old, had a 26-year-old, a 25-year-old, a 26-year-old, 28-year-old, 24, 26. More than half of their team is in that sort of prime of their career range, right? Like these are not two teams that are built equally. One of them has a few good senior players and a lot of youngsters pushing through who are still finding their feet and are not as far advanced as Paulson, Sermon, Old were last season. Like these guys are a year behind where they were. And then Auckland FC have a bunch of guys in their prime who are ready to win football games right now. Like that's not a fair contest.
Yeah, I don't really even know if there's a starting player from that Wellington Phoenix team who you can put in the Auckland FC team. Like the Auckland FC team is just better. They're better players. They're more experienced. They're steady at that level. But the zone I want to really focus on for a few minutes before we get into the rugby league, Rogerson and Mata. There was a really fun battle between like Rogerson and Corbin Piper on that side of the field. Love to see that. And I think Rogerson banged a shot in from outside the box.
Yeah, he did.
Like this seems like a really good phase for Rogerson, feeling confident, scoring goals, probably playing his best footy. The other thing I was thinking about with Max Mata, and as we've talked a lot about it, Auckland FC, they look a better team with Mata and Mai as their kind of attacking duo. I'm going to do a quick search, but off the top of your head, do you think Max Mata is the same size as Chris Wood, like same height?
No, I think he's slightly shorter. Yeah, I'm not sure. Would it be around 1 meter 9? Well, it's not quite as big as you think he is, but I think he'd be around about 1 meter 90 or something. Max Mata's probably 6'1", maybe. But he has a leap on him. He gets up and wins those headers, and because they were a great defensive team from game one. It took them time to build into their sort of attacking structures a bit more, and I'm pretty confident at this point after seeing it displayed in the third derby. Like the elevation of Max Mata to the starting lineup was kind of the thing that did it for them, because they were a team that loves to cross the ball, but they had Guillermo Mai up front by himself and Jake Brimmer playing in behind him, two shorties, right? Neither of them are getting up for those headers. Well, Max Mata does, and he doesn't even have to win the header. Like I think it was it the second goal, Moreno's second goal, where a cross comes in from the left-hand side, would have been Francis de Vries, lobs it up. Isaac Hughes and Lucas Kelly-Heald both go for the same header up against Max Mata. No one really wins the header. 3 of them go up at once. No one really wins it, but the ball falls behind them to where Nathan Moreno slams it in, which may or may not have clipped in off Logan Rogers and Tommy Smith trying to suggest that afterwards. I actually think it did. Looking at the replays, I think there might be a case to say that. I also think there might be a case to say it hit his hand as it did. But that came about from Max Mata's presence in the middle, just getting up and challenging. He didn't win the header. He didn't score the goal. He didn't get an assist. But, well, he might have got an assist, actually. I'm not sure how they ranked that. It might have come back off him. But his presence there attacking that cross led to a goal. Whether it was direct or not, that doesn't happen without him.
Yeah, Max Mata's 186 centimeters, Chris Wood 191. So you were correct. You're pretty accurate, actually. So credit to you. You mentioned the crosses as the weakness, as the strong point. I think it was more the second phase. Like,
well, one leads to the other, right?
Yeah, but well, if you win the second phase, who cares what you do first? Like if that to me, that is the difference between the two teams right now. Auckland FC, they're winning the second phase, whether it's their intuition to follow the ball, whether it's the physical capacity, they're fitter, they're stronger. So they're not only predicting where the ball's going to be and getting there, but they're winning the ball in the second phase, whether it was for the goals, whether it's in the midfield, whether it's in defense. But and to me, so if you're getting crosses coming in and the ball's kind of squirting out to the edge of the box, that's where your centre midfielders are. And if you got like Verstrada, he's winning that ball. Rufa, he's winning that ball. But that like Roaconchi, Sheridan, they just switch off for a little bit and they don't win that ball. So I'm not too fussed. Like, yeah, sure, you might win a header, lose a header. But I mean, as you said, Max Mata, he's there to disrupt it. Like, it's not easy to just win headers when you got dudes jumping up with you. But it's all about the reaction to that phase. Auckland FC consistently won those reactionary moments across the field. Wellington Phoenix didn't. And it was interesting because that felt like the whole situation, like that was the whole kind of blueprint for the game. But it was weird how that then manifested itself directly in goals. Like goals came from Auckland FC winning the reaction.
Italiano said the same thing in his press conference too. He said exactly that. It just felt like Auckland, especially in that spell, were just winning every second ball. And that is like, yeah, because you can win the first header. The coaches talk a lot about the first contact from those crosses. Like you win the first header, if you win it well enough, you've dealt with the situation. There is no second phase, or the second phase is somewhere where you don't have to worry about it. If you don't, you still have to react. And the Phoenix won. They had a lot of clearances in that game. They not as many as they should have, but they were winning some of those. They were at least disrupting them. But on the second phase stuff, they just weren't getting there. They weren't reacting in time. And I suspect that was more than a tactical thing, more than a physical thing. That's really just a mental thing, isn't it? It's they're a little bit, especially in that spell leading up to halftime, they were dares in the headlights, and they just, yeah, they looked rattled in a way, which again is another symptom of having a lot of young players in your team, is they haven't experienced that kind of pressure before, and certainly not when the whole game is going against you like that, and you're conceding goals and it feels like everything's crumbling and you just need to hang on till half time. If they'd kept it at 2-0 leading into half time, well then Luke Brooks-Smith, got to mention Luke Brooks-Smith as well, coming on Phoenix's youngest ever goal scorer, one of the youngest ever goal scorers in A-League history, doing what he did, and also setting up a goal for Auckland, which is the give and the take of chucking a dude like that out there. But a lot of promise from what he showed there. It's his best A-League cameo yet. If his goal had made it 2-1, well, actually, there's not such a gulf between the teams at that point. They're one moment away from getting back even, and I actually kind of feel that about that game. I don't feel like the actual flow of the game was a 6-1 advantage for Auckland FC. I just think Auckland FC punished the little areas and mistakes they were able to find, weaknesses in the Phoenix game. They punished it ruthlessly. Phoenix has happened most of the season and weren't able to punish ruthlessly what they were able to find, which frankly against Auckland FC is not much. You're feeding on scraps there, but still, I don't think they were viciously outplayed for the entirety of that game. I think they had a terrible spell in the last 15 minutes of the first half, and I think they finished the game poorly. Once they conceded again, they then conceded a couple more times late on. Two of those goals were directly from losing the ball in their own half. One was the Luke Brooks-Smith pass across goal. The other was Verstrada rushing up on, I think it was Tim Payne. Tim Payne was angling infield and Verstrada tackled him, and then Logan Rogerson smashed that one in. Brilliant finish. Reminiscent of the goal he scored for the All Whites against Malaysia, which was like, I don't remember seeing Logan Rogerson score a goal like that before, but now I've seen him score two of them in a couple of months, so I guess this is just part of his bag now. So it's ruthless stuff from Auckland FC, but I don't know if the Phoenix were as far away behind, but then again, like it's also I can't write about how good Chris Wood is every week because he scores goals and doesn't do much else. But then scoring goals is the most important thing. It's like, yeah, well, Auckland FC punishing those things is far more important than having 70% possession in the game. So yeah, it was emphatic, it was comprehensive, and it is what Auckland are doing is pretty outstanding. But there is also like, I don't know. I can see the Phoenix bouncing back from this as long as they don't get in their heads about how bad that particular day was, because they will have a stronger team the rest of the way.